All right, I have 6:30. Let's go ahead and gather.
That's just crazy. Like I said, I showed up to pick this up.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started with the council committee meeting, July 21st, 2015. Call the meeting to order. We'll get started with we're actually going to go a little bit out of order here. We're going to start with the Public Works Committee. Mr. Cahill, Mr. Skidmore.
Yeah, so, Mayor, I believe it was last year, we had Mr. Durker from Nelson Road. He approached us about the safety concerns on Nelson Road and not having a complete sidewalk back there. As you all know, that's one of my goals, is trying to connect all of Erlanger. So Mr. Durker and Mr. Bogart have met, and I believe we're looking at a plan to get that area taken care of so people can walk safely down there. So, Rick?
Jim was out with me as well when we met, and what we're asking for permission to do for approval at the August meeting is to go ahead and have Jim's office do the design and engineering work, basically stretching from Winfield Lane down to Ashmont Drive for a pedestrian walkway. We're going to deem it that so we can look at alternatives versus just a regular sidewalk system. So, Mr. Viax, I don't know if you have any other comments you'd like to add to it.
I'd like to point out that it's about the only part of the pedestrian way link to both the flagship park and the Doe Run Lake Park that's remaining over there. Just about every other route along there that leads down to those two parks has a pedestrian way. Nelson Road, unfortunately, was a county-maintained road that Rick, 10 years ago, I guess now, that got turned back over to the city when they declared that all their roads that they maintain inside city limits within the Kenton County area became the city's responsibility. So we end up inheriting Narrows and Nelson. And Nelson was a very limitedly improved road. In fact, it was before a few houses were built back there, you couldn't pass two cars without somebody getting off the road, and it's still pretty narrow in that particular area. So Rick and I did meet out there with the gentleman. We told him that we didn't think that would be considered unless he got all the property owners to agree to allow it to occur, because we were going to have to put it in their front yards. And he apparently has accomplished that.
Yeah, so I do have that data right here, so if anybody'd like to see it from Mr. Durker. He did a nice job. He had a nice form letter put up there and went house to house, got the neighbors to sign off on that, and I think they're really excited about this, to have that access to the parks.
And we do have one small piece of sidewalk, a little gap section that's missing between Buck Hill and Winfield, and we're going to go ahead and get that filled in. We're in the process of getting quotes in from contractors right now to get that section filled in already with budgeted dollars. Shouldn't be anything out of the ordinary for us to go ahead and get that portion taken care of. So. And
so this is a sidewalk, a concrete sidewalk that we're talking about on Nelson, or is this a multi-use path?
Sidewalk.
Okay, good.
Okay, so that'll be our recommendation then at the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Any other discussion? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then we'll get back in order here with administration. Mr. Howard, Ms. Cahill.
We've got some discussion tonight in regards to the recodification of ordinances, and I will turn it over to Frank.
All right, we've provided you all with a report giving you the background of the issue. Primarily, the issue is we have a statute that requires our code to be reviewed every 5 years to resolve any issues about consistency and compliance with newly enacted statutes and so forth. We thought we were doing that with the supplement that we got every year from American Legal, but now we found out that American Legal says, no, we're not doing that. We've never done that. There's an additional charge to do that. and we haven't been doing it. Now, regardless of how we got to that point, and I'll be glad to go into that if anybody wants it, but the bottom line is we haven't been doing it. We're not in compliance with the statute. We need to do it. We've got two alternatives. One is a legal review, which is cheaper than the other alternative, which is a complete review of the recodification. As I indicated in the report, the codification hasn't been reviewed now for some 30, 35 years. Seems to me it's an appropriate time to do that. The primary reason for that is, for my opinion anyway, is that with that, American Legal will consult with the city and the department heads about the revisions they're proposing and any additional ordinances that we might think be appropriate. So my recommendation is to do the recodification.
I'm up for the floor, yeah. Renee?
Well, what have we been paying them? What have they been doing for what we've been paying them all along?
I'll guess Missy could address that better than I can, but my understanding is they simply take the ordinances that we send to them at the end of each calendar year and then revise the pages to which those ordinances are appropriate, and that's all they do. Unfortunately, they've been doing it, they have initially did the codification, and then my understanding is we, for whatever reason, left them and went with Burlington Publishing Company to do the supplements. Burlington Publishing went out of business and American Legal took it back over again. But what your question is, what do? They simply, it's sort of an editorial process. They take the ordinances that we give them at the end of every year and change the appropriate pages in the codification to conform to those changes. They do not do a review of the ordinances for consistency and obsolescence and so forth.
So what do we need them? Are we still gonna need them after this?
You always need to have your ordinances codified each year.
Is that something we have to pay someone else to do, or is that something that we can do ourselves?
No, I don't know that we have the expertise to do that ourselves, as far as the legal end of it. And we just, Burlington Publishing is or not Burlington, American Legal is the only publishing company I know of in this area.
Yeah, I would disagree with one thing you said. I think we have the legal expertise to do it. I think what American Legal does is they're a publisher. I mean, they're putting it out there on the internet-based site. They're creating the code of ordinances based on the ordinances that we give them. So what was very clear in the meeting, as Frank has indicated, is that they have been garbage in, garbage out. What we give them is what they put out. They are a publishing company. Now, they also have a legal branch that will do a legal review or a recodification for us, but historically they have merely acted as a publisher for us.
So if we've got the legal expertise to do that, isn't there a reason that we wouldn't use one of our two city attorneys to do the work?
The answer is we can do the work.
Okay.
I suspect that the time involved at our rates would be more expensive than what American Legal is going to be charging you, number one. Number two, they have the capacity to put it online, which I think is a great asset. I don't know that we have the capacity to do that.
No, I'm not talking about the ongoing codification. I'm just talking about the review process rather than paying American Legal to do a review. We could do our own review, correct?
You only have to do the review every 5 years. Can Mr. Gadd and myself do the legal review? I think the answer to that is yes. It doesn't have to be done by a third party, so I think we can do that and somehow or other put into the records of the city a report,
Right.
probably at a city council meeting, that we've done that and we're in compliance with everything we need to be in compliance with. Yes, we can do that. The supplementation, we can probably do that too, but again, we're not in the publishing business. We don't have the mechanical ability to republish those documents. And again, the biggest item is to change it online. As I've indicated in the report, I think we ought to make some effort to get the statutes changed to allow codifications to be online rather than having to have them in print. Because I mean, I don't use them anymore. I'll be honest with you. I always go online to see what the codification says.
So, just to kind of summarize part of this, the American Legal gave us two options on this. You know, there was the $2,800 option, and then there was the almost $17,000 option. Is it correct to say, if we go with the $2,800 option, that meets the statute requirement, the 5-year statute requirement?
It does.
Okay.
We could also meet the 5-year statute requirement with our current council.
Absolutely. The council could direct either Mr. Wickman or myself to perform the requirements under KRS to do a review every 5 years of the ordinances to make sure that there are no, you know, ordinances that contradict each other, still follow state law, federal law, the whole 9 yards. Absolutely.
That being said, too, that's something that we need to make sure we budget for every 5 years as well, you know, that $2,800 review.
We're in agreement with that. Our committee point of view, I just can't see us paying $16,000 for this, for recodification. It's just, it just kind of blows my mind, so. So I'm gonna recommend the $2,800, so, unless there's other opinions coming out from council.
Randy looks like he wants to say something.
Well, I'm just, I'm just thinking this through, and I mean, generally speaking, you want to at some point codify your ordinances. Otherwise, you don't have one common place where you can look and find them all, I wouldn't think. And it's been 30 years since we've actually, you said.
No, that's not really accurate. We're codifying each year.
Well, I thought, then what are they going to do if they're not?
So what the recodification is.
Organize them all.
No. No.
Okay.
The recodification, I mean, we're doing a code of ordinances every year.
Right.
Okay? I mean, that has been done, and that's the laws. When you do that
Right.
codification, that becomes the law. Now, all the recodification is, and again, I think we were all in this meeting, and we all maybe had a little different version of what recodification meant, but then we got a clarification email.
Okay.
And recodification is, and again, Frank or Missy, step up if I'm misquoting what this is. It's doing the legal review, but it's then also kind of cleaning up any grammar issues, punctuation issues, pretty type issues as far as cleaning up how it looks,
Okay.
changing the font, changing the looks of it, and then having that sit-down meeting with department heads to say, hey, is there anything you want to change in this code of ordinances? Have I accurately?
I think that's accurate, and the most important part of it is that sit-down with the department heads. Because I'm convinced that there are things in that codification that we now have that probably aren't appropriate in the current times and probably aren't being enforced. Those things need to be reviewed.
And we could do that sit down in the absence of American Legal, though, correct?
Absolutely.
So I'm just not clear here. What exactly are we getting for the 16,000 other than editorial stuff?
You're getting the editorial stuff, you're getting the production.
Well, yeah, production.
Of new codes, and you're getting the sit-down. And you're saying everything other than the sit-down. No, we're not getting much. The legal review is about the same in either case. But the sit-down to me is, I think, worth the effort. Because if you could have a sit-down with them under the legal review, but they're going to charge you for it on an hourly rate, and I'm sure it's going to be a pretty high rate, so you might get close to the 5 figures anyway.
And I hate to jump into this or create more work for myself, but I'm capped, and I'm going to hit my cap. So the more legal work the city puts on me, there's not really going to be a cost incurrence. I mean, we could do that same sit-down review with me or anyone else at my firm. It might be different than American Legal, but I mean, just from a practical perspective, whether I work 300 hours or 200 hours for the city, you're paying pretty much the same under the fee agreement that we negotiated.
I don't know if this is out of line or not, but is it something that we could get an idea of what the cost would be or how many hours it would take you to do that? I mean, I know you're talking about being capped, but still getting an idea.
I mean, that's an open-ended issue because again, and I'm not trying to, step on Mr. Wickman on this issue. I mean, this is a legislative issue, and I think it's up to the legislature to decide this issue. I'm only offering that I think we could do the same function either through Mr. Wickman and myself, and I think we have to be cognizant to the legal contracts that are in place with Mr. Wickman's office and my office, and the incremental cost to the city is going to be somewhat minimal based on the caps that are already in place. I guess that's all I'm saying. Okay. But I mean, this is a legislative function, and
any other thoughts or discussion? Questions?
The only other comment I would make is that the commitment from American Legal is to get that work done in 6 months. I don't know that I can make, or Mr. Gatlin or either one can make that commitment.
It'd be like a one-time thing, since
Yes.
it's been 30 years.
Yes,
Kind of a cleanup 30-year.
yep.
I see your point.
And it's going to charge us $2,800? Is that, or we're talking about the big one?
The big one, the 16,000.
Oh, my gosh, okay. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of years, too, though.
yeah, but we're yes and no. I mean, you're doing a new code of ordinances every year. So the fact that it has not been recodified in 30 to 35 years, all that really means is you have not cleaned anything up in the last 30 to 35 years from a aesthetic picture or from looking at some of the old ordinances. But each year when you're doing that new code of ordinances and you're adopting that ordinance, which is the new code of ordinances, you're in essence cleaning it up, and that becomes the new code of ordinances. So,
Well, I don't, I think I'm misunderstanding, but I'm not sure. What is done every year is not a review.
Agree.
It's almost an editorial process.
I totally agree. They're just garbage in, garbage out. Ordinances that are created by the city, they're putting online and putting in their book.
So
Agree.
What's in there and might not, maybe should not be in there, stays in there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a good example of this is the trash can ordinance.
Yeah.
You know, we had 3 different ordinances that had 3 different, ideas and different language, but all in the same codified group of ordinances. Mr. Cahill?
So what were we paying for the garbage in, garbage out? How much were we paying?
$1,300 or something?
Yeah,
It was a
about
pretty small amount to publish it.
A year or a month?
On the amount of ordinances that we have.
Okay.
Really
That's
depends on the amount of ordinances that are provided, but like Missy indicated, they'll run on the average around $1,300, $1,500 a year. Well, obviously, if you have a year with a lot of ordinances, it's going to be more. But again, it doesn't include a review. It's simply a editorial process of getting that in there.
And we're required to do the codification
Yes,
every 5 years,
Annually.
annually.
no.
We're required to do a
Correct.
review
We're
every
not
5 years.
required to do it
Review every
annually at
5
all.
Do it annually.
We do it annually,
Yeah.
but some cities don't. We're not required to do it annually. You could do it once every 5 years, once every 4 years, whatever. But you are required to have a codification. It's not optional.
But what the statute does require is that you do a review every 5 years, but it does not specify how that review is done.
That's correct.
Any other ideas there or questions? So, it sounds like what I've heard so far is that we would do the $2,800 version and then have Mr. Gatlin or Mr. Rookman do a more detailed review, making sure we don't have conflicts, making sure we're not going against state statute.
Well, the $2,800 legal review includes that.
It does.
What Mr. Gatlin and Mr. Wickman would do the sit-down with the
Okay.
staff.
All right.
If we do it that way, would there be an additional cost for publishing once you all do your sit-down and give those changes or whatever to the publishing company?
Publishing meaning the production of
Yeah.
no, there's no.
That would be part of it? Okay.
That's part of it. It includes 7 hard copies of the new codification and
The recodification does that. The $16,000 recodification would include 7 published copies.
Okay.
So
I don't know if that was your question.
$100 would not.
That's right.
that's right.
Any new ordinances that are created out of that would just go through the normal process.
And when they do the new ordinances on the codification, they just basically, I mean, kind of like we used to do with pocket parts in the back of the book. In other words, you're just kind of sticking them in the back. I mean, how does that work?
They produce new pages.
New pages?
You're
Okay.
supposed to take the
Okay,
old
kind of like the
pages out
loose
and
leaf
put the
books
new
you get,
pages
okay.
in.
Right.
Sounds good.
All right, Mr. Howard, do you,
We can, me and
Yeah.
Mr. Cahill can concur with that,
okay.
with the $2,800 codification, so. It will take longer, you're saying it's gonna take a little longer than the 6 months, right, Frank?
I would say so.
Say it'd be less than a year?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, can we move on to the next item here?
What was the
okay.
decision?
Okay, to try to summarize this, feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to have American Legal do the lesser review, the $2,800 review of our ordinances. And we're going to have, at this time, it's sounding like it's going to be Mr. Gatlin. I'm saying that only because of what you're saying about time, the time period. Have Mr. Gatlin review our current code of ordinances to go over punctuation, make sure.
I don't think we're not doing that piece, are we?
Yeah, that's why I'm a little confused with what the decision was. The legal review for $2,800 apply, that the statute is met, and they are then going to go through and make sure that none of the ordinances contradict each other, that there are no issues with ordinances that are outdated or violate state or federal law. That's done with the $2,800 review.
And then we just get a report at the end. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And from that point, then we would have to amend
You
our
have to
ordinances.
fix whatever the issues were by passing ordinances. Right.
One question I've got on the, after the first review, the recodification, will we do that on an annual basis then from that point?
Well, again, there's 2 different things. A review is different than recodification.
Right.
The answer is no. We'd do what we do now. We would send them the ordinances that we passed in the previous calendar year.
Right.
They would supplement the existing code,
All right.
and that's all they do.
Okay.
The $2,800 review would not be required except for every 5 years. And although I am cautious about Mr. Gatlin and I being able to produce the same product that the American Legal does in the recodification, the legal review can clearly be done by either one or both of us, and that only has to be done every 5 years. So if you do not do the recodification and you just do the $2,800 option, then you would be having the supplement done by American Legal every year and a legal review, according to the statute, once every 5 years by Mr. Gatlin or myself or both of us.
Answer my question.
Okay.
Mr. Gatlin, does that clear it up for you?
Yeah, I really, I mean, I agree with you 99% of the time, and on this one, I've struggled as to where we would get the bang for the buck on the recodification. I mean, what am I missing on this?
You're missing the review by the staff at no cost.
Well, at a cost of $14,000, right?
No additional cost.
But in theory, the department heads are reviewing things every day. I mean, that's why we're passing new ordinances every couple of weeks or every month.
No, they're not reviewing everything every day.
Okay.
Things come up that require action.
That's
They
fair.
recommend it.
That's fair.
They don't do a review.
That's fair.
Is American Legal the only one we can use?
They're not the only one. They're the only one in this area. They do it nationwide. There are companies, I think one of them is in Boston, and another one might be out west somewhere. There's not a whole lot of companies that do it. American Legal does most of them nationwide. And you can get online and check ordinances from Nashville to Los Angeles to whatever, and we do that, at least I do that. When things come up, I think another city might have passed an ordinance, I'll look around and see if I can find them. So I like American Legal, and I like the services they provide.
Agree, it's a very easy searchable site.
Do we think once we have the report from American Legal and do a sit-down with the city staff looking at that report that it's going to take more than 118 hours? I'm looking at the difference of the, you know, the $14,000 and what that billable rate is. If it's going to be more than 118 hours, then yeah, sure, let's pay American Legal to do it. It's going to be cheaper.
Would it take 118 hours
Of yours and Frank's time.
to sit down with staff to review the existing ordinances?
Well, the report, I guess, right?
No, again, I think there's some confusion. The legal review, all the legal review is going to provide us is, one, it does meet the statute, but two, it's going to identify for us any conflicting ordinances. It's not a review with department heads. That's the recodification.
Correct. No, I'm saying if we get that report, sitting down with the city staff with that report.
Well, my guess would be is that the report's not going to show a whole lot of issues. There might be at most 2, 3, 4 ordinances we're going to have to deal with. I don't think it's going to be a wholesale set of issues.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
One more question in regards. Frank, in your thing, you said the city doesn't have a written contract with American Legal. Do you think we need to get one in place?
Yes, they have contracts now. We would sign a contract with them for one or the other.
Okay, so, all right.
Yes.
It wasn't clear in the order.
So if we did the more expensive one, would it make your jobs easier on forward because everything's kind of fixed, I guess?
Yes, the answer is yes.
I mean, I'm still kind of leaning towards Frank just because it's 30 years of cleanup, and sometimes having a third party do that might be helpful. But that's just my thought.
Comes down to
Long
me too.
time.
Yeah, it's a very long time.
Administration committee, right?
And in the long run, it might save some money. I mean, it won't save money, but it'll be less costs in the future because it's all cleaned up from 30 years. So, that's just my thought.
I'm still leaning towards the 2,800, so.
Yeah, I think we have to be practical about the recodification too, because if they're gonna be sitting down with department heads and they're gonna be looking at changing existing ordinances with those department heads, that's not gonna be done in a vacuum. Mr. Wickman and I are gonna be a part of that process. So it's not a complete turnkey operation, because I don't think the city would want it to be a complete turnkey operation. I just can't envision American Legal going to, you know, Mark and saying, hey, you gotta change this, this, and that, without him sending an email to Mr. Wickman and I saying, what are your all's thoughts on this? So, I mean, it's not a complete isolation of Mr. Wickman and I from being involved in the process.
This is really a legislative issue, so, I mean,
Well,
I'm looking to you guys to,
With council approval, I'll just make a recommendation to council. We'll go with the $2,800 legal review, and then go with it from there. This is council's approval.
Does it go for a
We need-
vote at a meeting, or does it just, okay.
Please.
Does it need to? I mean, do we even need to vote on it, or are we just going with the committee's recommendation?
I just want to get council's feedback on that part of it. It's before I bring a recommendation to council in 2 weeks, you know. So. Somebody give me some.
any other feedback?
That's a lot of money.
Literally, it's not subject to a vote. I mean, we've done that in committee meetings before.
Right.
But literally, the process should simply involve a recommendation from the two-member committee
Exactly.
at the at the regular council meeting, and at that time, the council can vote on it one way or the other.
Well, we'll come back to, as far as the Ethics and Administration Committee, I think we'll look at it as just going ahead with the recommendation that we do the $2,800 review on it rather than the recodification. So we'll leave that up to the attorneys to do that for us.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So moving on to the next item here. Oh, of course, I don't have a copy of this in front of me. The Kenton County Mayor's Group meeting. I wanted to bring this up. There was a resolution that got brought forward. Did everybody get a copy of that? The resolution?
I don't think so.
Okay. Let me describe it real quickly, and then I'll make sure you each have it. As part of the Dixie Fix program, there is again, going back to sidewalks, we've got a section of sidewalk along Dixie Highway from Park Hills down to Covington. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that area, kind of through the turn there at the bottom of the stairs where Gateway's stairs are. And the mayor's group put together a resolution to request from Governor Beshear that dollars be allocated to put that sidewalk in. Honestly, my opinion is it's not really a mayor's group issue. I mean, that's more of something that they should be going to Arnold Simpson or one of our representatives for. But I don't necessarily want to be the person that speaks for our whole city when it comes to things like that and resolutions. And I've decided that when it comes to a resolution of the mayor's group, I want to get your approval first. I wouldn't stand against it. I question how effective it'll be. But you know, if they want to pass a resolution and request this of the governor to do this, I think it would be a good idea. But I wanted to make sure I had your buy-in on that. Of course, it's not as easy for you to say, and I'm not expecting you to vote on it or anything to that effect without seeing it, but I'll make sure you each get a copy of it. Something that seems like would probably be easy to just email and get your okay on something like that when it's not necessarily a city issue. But again, trying to make sure that we're maintaining all aspects of the Sunshine Law and keeping things open and public on these decisions. I wanted to do it in a public meeting. So, We'll make sure we have it for the next council meeting, that you can review that ahead of time. The next item on the agenda is Public Works Committee. Mr. Cahill, Mr. Skidmore, or no, I'm sorry, excuse me. The Police Committee, Ms. Sudcam, Ms. Kyle.
Yes, I think we're going to defer to Mark Fields and Chief Wilson.
I wanted to kind of open this to tell you how we got to where we're at today. Most of you were on City Council when we awarded the franchise for the towing business with the City of Erlanger. I'll tell you how that came about. We were probably the first city in the state of Kentucky, I can pretty much say we were, to do this. It's become a national trend to do that. Our business is a very lucrative business for whoever gets it. The city forever had worked with Gillespie's Towing up on Dixie Highway. They were the only towing company in our city. And when Jim Clifton died, service at Gillespie's changed. We met with them several times, and finally they went out of business, to be quite honest with you. They went out of business. So we were looking at options to do. At that point in time, there was not another towing service in the city. Lo and behold, Airport Towing does come into the city, buys a building, does some things. You all did some zoning changes to get it off of Dixie Highway, to put it in the area that it's in. We went out for a bid process. That bid process garnered us 3 bids. Airport Towing was the lowest bid of that, and still is today. When you start checking and some things have come up, and why we're having this conversation is because there obviously you have received complaints about the charges from Airport Towing and maybe some other ones. I know during the campaign the mayor heard several from residents that he was probably talking to and some things like that. I don't know about several, I don't know how many, but it was brought up, it was an issue. So it's been an issue we've been discussing since January, or maybe even a little bit before. I know I've talked to council people about it personally from time to time. But we issued that franchise fee. Well, I'm going to sit here and tell you at the same point in time, we enacted a $75 administration fee on top of that. We had done away with that years ago, but we used to have a I believe it was $25 when we did Gillespie's before, years ago when we were in the basement of this building. We had that fee on there at that point in time. State law restricts us to the $75. We enacted it, and it's been there. I'm going to tell you that, you know, this contract has meant to us in the city of Erlanger somewhere in the area of about $50,000 a year. Now, you can say $50,000, but I'll tell you this, that $50,000 was far more than any other bidders that bid on this contract before was willing to pay for this franchise. Also, it was a local business here in our city that we were supporting to do. As far as the operations of this business, we truly, and Chief Wilson's going to talk, but have no complaints about the service that they provide us. I'm going to give you just an example, and Assistant Chief Eagler came up with these numbers and has been heading this up most of the time. But I think when we talk about looking at this and making changes to this, we need to understand all of the ramifications of this and what it means to us, okay? Number one, we only impound cars of people that break the law, okay? We don't impound cars parked on the street very often for parking violations. It's very rare. To date, we have impounded 360 cars as of yesterday, I believe. Only 13% of that 360 are either residents of the city of Erlanger or Crescent Springs. We impound a very small percentage of residents' vehicles. The only reason you get your vehicle impounded is if, in fact, you are violating a state statute, very rarely on a parking. I believe we could probably get the numbers, but we very rarely impound vehicles parking. Never have. Since we got rid of city stickers years ago, some of you on council may remember those headaches that we had with those. We just don't do it. So I want everybody just to put this into context about what it is, and when you're hearing all these things, there are instances, and we've worked with every instance that we know of, that I believe that has come up. Some people have bad luck. Some people go out and their kids take their cars and their kids get in trouble and they end up getting arrested, and all of a sudden, oh, here it is. We have worked with almost every one of those cases, and Airport Towing has worked along with us to do some of that. Now, there are some things that we'd like to change. You're going to hear them from Chief Wilson. Talked to Mr. Gatlin about it, and he believes that we can probably do that through an agreement, whether it be just another contract, an MOU, or whatever. There is not another company close to us that can provide this service. So if we impound the car and we now give it to another towing company, we go out for bid and we go to another towing company somewhere else. Now all of a sudden we're sending people to Burlington to go get their car released. Is that customer service? We never did think that was. So we need to be able to think about the radius, if we're going to open it up, where we want to send these people to go get their cars, where we want to have a service that we can look at and go talk to and be with and provide that service. There's a whole lot more aspects to this than just somebody complaining because it cost them $300 to get their car. I will tell you that if you look around, you're going to find that these prices are pretty much area-wide and maybe even less expensive than what other cities and other impoundments are getting. Go to Cincinnati and get your car towed. It would have cost you over there to get it back. And it's terrible. I think we probably got some people in the audience that have personal experiences about that. But there are some things we'd like to change. If we need to change those by going out for bid, if that's what you all decide, so be it. We go out that way. I think that we would like to see, and I won't speak for Chief Wilson, he can speak, but of just trying to work through this and getting some of these changes that he's going to bring up through the existing contract that we have now, addressing some of those issues to clarify some things.
There were just a few things that we wanted to change. It's very small. They might sound even somewhat petty, but these 360 cars that we've impounded up to yesterday are 360 people that are aggravated because they're paying $200, $500, $600, $700 to get their car out of impound. One of the things that would alleviate some of these complaints was a single point of collection. In addition to the tow fees and the storage fees, Mr. Fields talked about the $75 administration fee. What typically happens and generates these complaints is a person will, most cases, will get out of jail, they'll either walk or take a cab or a bus to the police department. We'll tell them this is what you have to do to get your car out. You have to pay us $75, you have to bring your insurance, your license, your registration, and then they'll either walk or take a cab or however they can get to airport towing. A lot of times they'll go to airport towing first. He'll tell them they have to come here first. So they'll walk here, and then we tell them they have to provide that documentation. And they said, well, it's in my car at airport towing, so we tell them to go back there. So now they've got out of jail, they're walking. So the single point of collection was one of the things that we wanted to implement. So whoever gets the contract or whatever the agreement gets set in place, they can collect that fee for us. So, like Mr. Fields said, we only impound cars. People break the law, so we all have an impoundment slip on every car. So we just send him a bill for every car that gets impounded. He collects the fee for us. He releases a car for us, and that's going to hopefully get away from some of these complaints. Another change that we wanted to make was the storage fees. Typically, some of these storage fees, if your car gets impounded at, say, 8 o'clock at night, you're instantaneously hit with a $35 storage or $30 storage fee for that day, and then at midnight, another $30 storage fee for the following day, so you're getting hit with 2 days of storage for less than a 24-hour impound. What we wanted to add in there was that the first day of storage is included in the impoundment fee, and then it can't be charged again for a 24-hour period. Folks are getting $160 tow bill with 2 days of storage and $120 worth of administrative fees. So they get arrested for whatever, their kid drives without insurance or whatever the case may be, and then they get hit with a $500 bill the next day for, their kid being irresponsible. With the processing fee, currently he has a $40 administration fee. We have the $75 one. What we want to do is just incorporate that into one and then determine through whatever discussion or negotiation what each party would be getting from that. So if it was 75 and he get 25, then the city would collect their 50 and then we would be out of it. But we're pretty much going to be out of it altogether because they're not coming to the police department anymore for anything other than to complain about him, which folks, it may seem petty, but these people are here every day and they're screaming and hollering at the clerks every day. We're trying to make it easier on them. We're trying to make it easier on us. Our officers are going to be responding up there irregardless. We're up there 30, 40 times a year as it is for fights and disputes and things like that. So that's not going to change, but we're just really trying to get a little bit more control over how business is conducted for something that's kind of out of our hands. Unfortunately, we've come to the conclusion after many meetings and discussions that airport towing is our best option right now. To put it out the bid, like Mr. Fields said, we're on pace to tow 700 cars this year, and not including another 1,000 from Rex maybe, depending on how many cars or trucks or whatever's involved. And that volume is only second to the city of Covington. So he's got this facility. We have to deal with his complaints, but it's about it's the best option that we have right now. And going out to bid could cause more issues because, like you said, they may have to travel 10 miles out of the city to get their car. Any questions in regard to towing?
Sounds reasonable.
I think it's reasonable. I'd rather keep it in our city.
Yeah.
He's a businessman. He came here for a reason.
That's right.
Renee?
Do you
Oh.
trust them
Kathy?
to look for the insurance and make sure that that is correct and that their paperwork is legit
Yeah.
and up to?
Yeah, because what they'll do is they'll call us and they'll call the clerks and they'll have them, they can run their driver's license. They can tell them whether or not they're suspended. Now, the insurance, the best information that they're going to get is the same information that we're going to get, because our clerks will call the number on the card and verify the insurance, and they can do the same thing. As far as the registration, it's their name's on it, and they only release it to those people that are on that registration. So
I know because they can come in. I've been to the courthouse before and people have come in with bogus whatevers and
they've tried here too, and they'll continue to try it.
Okay, all right, yeah. I just make sure that you trusted that they would make sure that we're not giving a car who really doesn't have insurance or whatever.
Yeah, because if he can deny releasing the car to him to get another day of storage, he'll do that. It's the bottom line.
Renee?
Okay. We had 3 personal issues with airport towing, okay? One, and I followed your story all the way to, they come here and then they have to walk back to airport towing, then they come back and then they walk back. Well, when you walk back the second time, then he tells you can't get into your car because you're not getting anything out of your car until you've paid for it. Well, if that's where you keep your insurance card.
Yes.
And everything that you have to produce when you get pulled over.
Yes.
Then that doesn't work either. So
that was one of our complaints with Mr. Thomas, and hopefully the legislature has corrected that or alleviated that issue. New law went into effect as of June 24th this year, along with all the other state statutes that were created or changed that allow people to retrieve their personal property from an impounded vehicle by state law. So he cannot deny them access. He may have to go get it due to liability and insurance reasons, but he is no longer allowed to deny folks access to their personal property from their vehicle.
The second one, the accident was at Virginia and Kenneboo, and you have Rick's Garage right there, and they wanted to charge $100 to tow it 100 feet, 200 feet, 100 feet, okay?
Yes.
Well, we just pushed it, you know,
Sure.
no big deal. And the third issue, our son got pulled over. It was a random check. They told him his plate was expired. Well, that was one of those, somebody did part of the paperwork but didn't do the other part.
Yes.
The insurance company that he canceled with and changed to go with a lower rate.
Yes.
The insurance company reported him that he didn't have any insurance because he canceled it, but the new insurance company didn't bother to report that he did have insurance.
Exactly.
So that was gonna be, he was gonna be impounded for 3 days.
I don't know about the time length, but yeah, that started happening probably midway through last year, where insurance companies were not reporting that insurance was, in fact, on the vehicle, where the previous insurance company just stopped getting paid by the client, and then they would report that they didn't have insurance. So the one would report it to the county, they would cancel the plate, and in the computer that are in all the police cars would say, take the plate and impound the car. We've ran into, of course, in your case, we were able to avoid that, but in several other cases we weren't. And the complaint was, well, it started with us, but it ended with the county clerk's office. But they still ended up paying a lot of money for impoundments. It's kind of unfortunate, but we told our officers to verify that the plate is in fact good on the vehicle and that they do have insurance. So as far as Erlanger's concerned, our officers are calling and verifying the insurance with the insurance company. If they don't have the insurance, then they're going to impound the vehicle. But if the plate is canceled, we're not jumping and impounding them right away. Now, as far as Larry wanting to tow $100 for 100 feet, that's pretty typical and standard for that.
I mean, I understand.
Yeah, it's something that we don't have any control over.
But as far as putting it out for bid, you know, when we did the, garbage bid, okay, we actually put it out for bid again, and CSI came in lower. We could have renewed and just been done with it and said, we'll renew and move on.
Yes.
But we had to rebid, and he actually came down, was it $3? Was it $3? $3 on the bill, wasn't it? So what, $12 a year, you know, apples to apples, you can go to Frisch's and your $12 is gone. So, but anyway,
But you
I
can't
think
get a
we
vanilla
should.
Coke.
Do what? Oh,
But you can't get a vanilla
No, you
Coke
can't get
anymore.
any Coke. You can't get a big blend of Coke anymore. So I think we should bid it out. Maybe he'll come back with more compromises, I don't know. And
That's a
that way
good
it's
point.
fair to everybody. I don't think we should just.
Oh, I don't know, boy, that place means so much to the police department. It just means everything to them, to be able to call them at 4 o'clock in the morning and everything's taken care of.
Well, I can tell you that the complaints that we have, Mr. Thomas, are the arbitrary fees and what has been expressed to us as exorbitant fees. After all these meetings and discussions and reviewing other cities and their fees that they have with their towing companies, they experience the same exact problems, but Mr. Thomas's are very much in line with everyone else's. I was kind of surprised, but they were in line. As far as towing companies and tow truck drivers go, the problems are pretty consistent across the board. I don't want to generalize and say anything bad about those folks, but it's just, I think it's the nature of the beast.
Like cab drivers.
Okay? Here, I'm not afraid to say it. Short timer, I'm not afraid to say it. Let me tell you something. The last honest record driver died when Jim Clifton died.
I agree.
And that's a fact, okay? The rest of them are in this for the money, and you got to use them. It's a necessary evil. We will never be able to control anybody on the wrecks and call for that. You can call any wrecker you want to move it as long as they can get there in time and not block up our roads. We can't control that. We never have been able to. You never will be able to control that, to do that alone. And I don't want, you know, I'm jumping in here, but I don't want to understate that, you know, going out for bid is a pretty long, lengthy process. and it's going to be a lot of work internally to come up with that bid package, put it out, do all that, go through there. We could, maybe, you know, you're right, exactly. You know, Republic came back and, yeah, theirs was less than what our renewal was. So the residents did save some money that way. And it could be that way again. We'd be more than happy to jump in and do that. You know, and I know that when we look at, you know, it's not only the lowest price, it's going to be the service, it's going to be the location, you know, all those things will be in consideration. It'll be the best bid, not the lowest bid, you know, that'll provide that service to us. But I don't want to see, if we can accomplish the things that we want to accomplish without going through that process, and Mr. Gatlin has assured me that we can maybe go through that, or at least attempt to go through it before we decide to do it the other way. If we can attempt to do it before we make a decision to go out and bid, if nothing happens that way and we can't negotiate some of these things that we've been talking about negotiating, then yeah, you know, by all means, we're going to have to go out for bid and do something and see if we can't correct some of the things that have been occurring that way. You were talking about, Ms. Cahill, when you were talking about bringing that back in and trusting them. You know, we had talked about this, and I'm not opposed, because we had talked about this, and we used to operate this way. We collected all the money here, and then we paid the towing company outside of that. The only thing we didn't collect was, in fact, their storage fees. When we do that and bring it all back in here, what happens is we have to pay for every tow. And that's the way we used to do it with Gillespie's. And those abandoned cars that are on the interstate that seem like that's where everybody, they want to get rid of a car and they don't know where to put it, they park it out here at 275 and I-75. We don't know why. They leave them there. We impound them, and lo and behold, and there's 6 or 7 a month that we get. And I'm telling you, that 6 or 7 a month is more than most police departments around here impound and that whole month. We get that many from out here. We end up paying for that tow, so we're out that money. Is that the cost of doing business to keep it in-house? Maybe it is, to collect all the money here and then pay that out, because that's the way we used to do it. And it worked. The system worked well. And also, Gillespie's made the money and then got to junk the car and get rid of it, but we paid for the tow because they weren't out anything at that point in time. We changed that when this whole thing started back then. So, you know, there is that way to do it if we want to verify, you know, to make sure that our people are verifying who gets that car released. We can address that way too.
Are there any other questions in regards to this?
I've got a quick question. To my understanding, we're the only city around here that has the franchise fee. Is that correct?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. With a single towing company, though. So what's the norm in the other cities then? I mean, what do they do?
The other cities, the only other city that tows, other than Covington, that tows the amount of cars that we tow is Florence. And they have a rotation, and they have their stipulations on who can and who can't tow for them. And they'll have up to 15 or 20 different tow agencies, and they just simply go down the list, and the next one on the list gets the tow. The problem with that is it might be Walton, it might be Burlington, it might be Covington, it might be Ludlow, and then you got folks coming in, and then you're really on an inconsistent, where are they going to go, who's going to collect the money, and what kind of service are you going to get, and what time frame.
It could be a record-keeping nightmare there, couldn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is I'm not a Larry Thomas fan, but he is here. He gets here quickly when we call him. He's just invested in some other big wreckers that are capable of towing semis, which unfortunately we're on the interstate constantly, and those do come up. So his capabilities have increased. His complaints aren't going to go down, but it's kind of
right. I've heard